Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is episode 9. I'm going to be talking about week 8 of my 1 year accountability project. If you are new here, this podcast is basically me documenting a full year of trying to get my life a little more dialed in spiritually, physically, mentally, and professionally. Every week, I check in on a handful of goals that I've set for myself in 2026. Some weeks are great, some weeks, not so much. But the point of this podcast is honesty, not perfection. So let's start with the weekly checklist. Okay, so the checklist. My Bible reading got a yes for every day. Daily prayer, once again, it's a no, unfortunately. I missed some days this week. Not proud of that, but I'm not going to pretend otherwise. For my carnivore diet, I'm going to say partially. I went out with some friends and I got a little freewheeling with the food. Not anything terrible, but definitely not strict carnivore. Did I have a no social day this week? No, I did not. My monthly book, I also did not get an opportunity to read that this week. Actually, I'm behind now because I didn't finish my February book. So now March has two books waiting on me. That's kind of a problem because trying to fit, I'm already struggling to fit everything into 1 month. Nevertheless, we're still gonna shoot for getting those books completed. Um, Working on my new skill in artificial intelligence, yes. Podcast preparation, yes. So overall, I had some wins, I had some misses. That's just life. Not making any excuses, of course, but one thing I did stay consistent with this week was something that I've been experimenting with for a little while now, and that's fasting. Every once in a while, I'll have a 72-hour fast, but every week, I don't do that often, but every week I do have a 24-hour fast on Mondays. Um, like I said, sometimes it's 24 hours, sometimes it's 48 hours. It really depends on how badly my weekend went. But one thing I do want to remain consistent about this year is that every Monday, I will complete at least a 24-hour fast. I'll talk about why a little bit later. But one of the reasons I started fasting, or something that hit me when I started fasting, I started paying a little bit better attention to my health and how often I eat. So, I mean, think about it. We have breakfast, a snack, lunch, a snack, dinner, a snack. Some people maybe not quite that much eating during the day, other people possibly more. Um, Late night snacks. We're basically feeding ourselves every couple of hours. And historically speaking, that's not typical human behavior. Humans have spent most of our evolutionary history in cycles of feast and famine. Sometimes there was food, sometimes there wasn't. But modern life or modern culture has turned our eating into a constant activity. I started looking into the metabolic health and insulin and weight regulation, and then I happened upon the carnivore diet a little while ago. Uh, but fasting kept coming up everywhere I looked. So I started experimenting. Nothing super extreme. I just took the simple idea of experimenting, or decided, what if I gave my body a break from digestion once a week? So Monday became my reset day because, frankly, that's the easiest day. I don't generally have anything planned on Mondays. I almost never go out to eat with friends or family or whatever on Mondays, recovering from the weekend. But I have no food, just water, some electrolytes, and occasionally I will extend it to Tuesday, and even more occasionally, or I should say less often, because I might only do this once a quarter or even twice a year, if that, but I'll do a 72-hour fast. This year I have had one 72-hour fast. I don't know when I'll do my next one, but I will maintain my 24-hour fasts on Monday. Um, Now, obviously, I am not a doctor, and this podcast is definitely not intended to give you any kind of medical advice. But there is some interesting research that's available for the average person to read. Um, that talks about what happens when we stop eating for a period of time. When you do eat, your body primarily burns glucose or sugar for energy. But when you stop eating, your body eventually runs out of stored glucose. At that point, from what I understand, it starts switching fuel sources. The process looks roughly, I'd say roughly like this. I'd say in your first 12 to 14 hours, your body's kind of still burning glucose from your last meal. Not much really changes. Somewhere between 12 and 24 hours, your body begins to use glycogen, which is stored carbohydrate in your liver. Now, once glycogen starts dropping, your body begins increasing fat metabolism. Happens around 24 hours for most people, I would think. Fat burning increases, ketones begin rising. Did I say that word right? I don't even know. Ketones, I don't know. But we're going to go with ketones or ketones. So, ketones are these molecules your body produces from fat to fuel your brain and your muscles. So I'd say for most people, it probably happens somewhere between 24 and 48 hours from everything I've been reading. Our insulin levels drop significantly, and our body relies more heavily on fat for energy. Um, and then I learned a new word. Something interesting starts to happen called autophagy. There's another medical term. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing correctly, but I know what it means. It literally means self eating. Is that the right word for this? I don't know. That's what I wrote down here in my notes. But it's a cellular recycling process where the body breaks down damaged cell components and then reuses them. Now, this mechanism was apparently only just discovered a few decades ago, from what I understand. And there's tons of literature out there on this. I only looked at it just a fraction of it, but so don't yell at me if I say something incorrectly. But I think I have this correct. Some Japanese scientist, oh my lord, I got to pronounce this, named Yoshinori Osumi. Okay, so sue me. I don't know. He won a Nobel Peace Prize in 2016 for research that helps explain how autophagy works. Now, I just want to be clear. I don't think we still fully understand exactly how fasting influences this process in humans because I've read some conflicting things, but the relationship between fasting and cellular cleanup is definitely a major area of research. So what does this actually look like for me? Um, I keep it pretty simple. I usually finish eating on Sunday night, and then Monday becomes a no food day. I have water. I don't like coffee, but they say you can drink coffee. Okay, let me back up. I don't drink coffee because I don't find it pleasurable to drink, but I do like the sweetened cold coffees, like the mocha frappe at Food Line, McDonald's, or any kind of coffee flavored ice cream. Those taste delicious to me. But just to drink coffee, it, never been a thing for me. So that is not a habit I had to break or one that I'm going to try to start either. But they say you can have black coffee, but I do take electrolytes with my water. Well, I say I take electrolytes. What I really do is just sprinkle a little bit of sea salt in my water. I get the oh boy, is it Celtic sea salt? And that's it. If I go 48 hours, I'll go all the way until the end of the day, Tuesday, and then I break my fast very gently. I don't go smash a steak immediately. Instead, I'll start with something simple, like generally speaking, when I'm ready to break a fast, even a 24-hour fast, I'll just start with a cup of heated bone broth or beef broth, and sometimes I'll throw in some chicken broth just for seasoning because personally I think beef broth and bone broth are kind of bland. So the chicken has enough salt in it to notch up the flavor. That's just my personal opinion, but I like it warm, like it a little salty. It's easy on the stomach, and after that settles, then I'll move back into normal food. Typically something more carnivore friendly like eggs and beef. Just something simple. Um, how does it feel to fast? Uh the first thing people assume when they hear the word fasting is you must be starving. I would say the hunger comes in waves. It's not constant. You might feel a little hungry for 10 minutes or so, and then it passes. Something else I notice is I do generally have better mental clarity to a degree. I'm not going to say that I become some smart man overnight. That's just not reasonable. But 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 I do strangely feel like there's some clarity in my thought. After about a day of fasting, I typically um, feel more focused. Like I said, that's just my personal experience, but there's actually some research suggesting that ketones can be an efficient fuel source for the brain. Um, I have a note here that says I like the discipline aspect. And I guess what I'm talking about there is the ability or the power of choosing not to eat when I easily could, because we have access to food like crazy here in this country. But being able to look at something I want, because let me tell you, I want a cookie. I mean, even when I'm not fasting, I want a cookie. I love cookies, and I can't have any. But there is something strangely exhilarating about being able to say no to something that I really, really like and that I have easy access to. Kind of resets your relationship with food over time. And it stops being something that, food stops becoming something that I'm constantly chasing. It becomes more intentional. And from a digestive standpoint, generally feels like my body appreciates the break. Now, I want to be extremely clear about something. This podcast is about what I am personally experimenting with. I am not providing you with instructions. I'm just telling you what I'm doing and how it's impacting me. I'm also not providing advice. Now, if you're going to pursue anything like this, I do, disclaimer, recommend you talk to a doctor or someone you trust first. Don't take my word for it. Fasting is not appropriate for everybody. There are various medical conditions, pregnant women. I mean, there's a throng of people out there who probably fasting may not be appropriate for. Um, Especially like I said, people with certain medical conditions or whom are on certain medications. I think I already mentioned pregnant women, people with eating disorders. There's all kinds of situations where fasting could be harmful. So please be careful. Don't take my word for it. Anyone interested in fasting should absolutely do their own research and talk to their doctor. As I've said, I'm simply documenting what I'm trying during this accountability year. So for me, fasting kind of fits into a larger goal. I want to have better metabolic health. I want to have better discipline. I want to have better awareness of how my body works. The carnivore diet is part of that. So I'm removing ultra processed foods, reducing, if not eventually eliminating sugar, eating simpler foods, and fasting just adds another layer to that. Instead of eating constantly, I'm giving my body periods where it simply runs on stored energy. Which, if you think about it, that's kind of exactly what body fat is for. It is stored fuel. So that's my weekly fasting experiment. I do it every Monday, sometimes stretching it to 48 hours. And honestly, I feel pretty darn good doing it. Will I do it forever? I don't know. That's hard to say. I hope to have 20 or 30 more years left on this earth. But for this year, this accountability year, it is part of my process. I'm learning, I'm testing it, I'm making adjustments, I'm seeing what works and documenting it as honestly as I know how. I appreciate you following along, and I will see you next week.